Hello everyone. Welcome to Outriders Worldslayer. In today's video I'm going to share with you an Anomaly Pyromancer build with very good AoE and the best single target DPS I have tested so far, focusing on one of my favorite skills, the Eruption, that got buffed very well thanks to the Pax Trees and the Ascension Trees. So without any further delay, let's just jump right into it, starting with our skills. Thermal Bomb, Faser Beam and Eruption. I have tested not a lot of combinations since these are the combinations I found best for AoE and single target DPS, and I got the best mods. Thermal Bomb is something excellent, you don't have to underestimate it in this build. It deals a lot of damage, debuffs the enemies and help us set up a good Eruption. Faser Beam got a huge buff, you don't need to now charge it for 3 to 4 seconds, you only charge it for I think 1 second, so the buff is very good. One of the best single target and AoE skills and one of my favorite options to use in many builds, and works very well with this build. And of course the all-star is the Eruption. Now it got a huge buff because our cooldown is not the lowest we can get, but this is very acceptable, it's below 12 seconds. It deals a lot of damage for single target, AoE, damage over time. Before the patch, Eruption wasn't as good, it was decent, okay, but now it shines, you can use it as your main DPS skill for AoE and single target DPS, and of course for this we're going to use the Lava Lich head, spoiler alert, because it buffs a lot Eruption for damage and cooldown. So let's have a look at the armor and mods we're using. 3 pieces of the Lava Lich head, the head, the chest and the legs. As you can see, you don't have to go for maximum average level, I make sure I'm at least 1 level below. This works well even if 2 levels below. You have to focus to have your legendary set, the proper mods, and then you will still do a lot of damage. Survivability may be a little issue, but for the damage you're still very good, even 1 or 2 levels below. So the headpiece has the best attributes we need: Anomaly power, status power, these are the top 2, and now skill leech to increase a little bit our survivability. Now it has Ashen Champion, so Faser Build now we won't inflict burn, but we don't care, it will inflict Ash and further boost our Anomaly power up to 100%. Excellent, I love this mod for AoE or single target, even 20% Anomaly power increase is very decent. I have added Etna and I got lucky with Apocalypse Gear and have Pompeii. This way we have 3 charges of Eruption. For the chest piece, I leave Giga Blast. This is a must mod to have. It increases the radius of Eruption by 100%. You can kill a lot of enemies with Eruption now. 1-shot normal enemies, 1 or 2-shot elites, depending on your buff. So yes, this is a must mod. Frequent Phaser. I have tested the build without this. However, the rotation is much better with 30% cooldown reduction for Phaser Beam. And I was lucky enough to have Damage Absorber to increase a little bit my survivability. For the legs, we leave Size Matters because it increases the beam radius of Phaser Beam by 100% to help you with a little bit of AoE, and I do like it. Captain Hunter, 60% increased damage against the Lich, and Branded, I was lucky once again to have enemies that are affected by the skill receive 30% more damage. Be warned, you no longer can stack Branded twice, that's why I'm not using Fire Frenzy once again, because there's no point in my opinion, you don't need 2 thermal bombs here, only 1 is more than enough, and we need the Brandy just to debuff the bosses and some enemies. Now this is one of the 2 Apocalypse gear I'm missing. For the gloves, I have Anomaly power, cooldown reduction. You must have for the gloves and legs Anomaly power, cooldown reduction, otherwise you won't have as good cooldowns, and then status power is the best you're looking for. I made a compromise, I have healing received because I had the bullet kindling, excellent for single target DPS, and no resistance against the fortified. I think I don't have to express how important this mod is. 100% of armor piercing converts to resistance piercing. A must-have mod for all Anomaly power builds for now. We need resistance piercing and we combine it with the next mod, which is the Unstoppable Force. But the boots in general, once again, not a god roll, Anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and I make the compromise to have skill life leech. Unstoppable Force, 50% of resistance piercing is converted to Anomaly power, and that's what we're looking for the combo. White Grip is a dead mod, but I made once again a compromise because I wanted the other stats. And Fire Trap, I have tested this and I do like it for a simple reason. For single target DPS it's dreadful, okay. But for AoE it's good to clear a few, I don't know, 3 or 4 enemies, because you toss a firebomb, you debuff the enemy, you deal around 1,000,000 damage, and the enemy will die with only the thermal bomb. This way you can kill, I don't know, a group of 3 or 4 enemies with one thermal bomb, and you can focus on the rest of the mobs without problem. That's why I do like this mob. And for the other two, we're going to look at them on the section of the suggested alternate weapons and mods. So let's have a look at our weapons. I'm going to show you what I was using in most of my video behind, because I didn't got the god roll. I was very unlucky with my drops. I just got the god roll when I wanted, but here to the desert is probably one of the best weapons you can use because of the attributes: armor pierce, status power, skill life leech, extra damage, extra survivability, what we're looking for, and you can add mage's race for single target DPS. This is the best anomaly power tier 3 weapon mode. It increases your anomaly power up to 40% for 15 seconds as long as you're doing criticals. Sunstorm, and I was using a dead mode, but it was still good. The single target DPS is insane and you nuke the enemies. Now, you can use, for example, other weapons such as Mythos that I was using for a secondary weapon with armor pierce and no other mods for status power to make the compromise. In case this, for example, had the Mage's Rage, I was going to use this as my weapon. The major drawback of Mythos is the Omen, that is very bright, but they're going to fix that thankfully. And for the secondary weapon we add Firestorm. But let's have a look at the god rolls I got, because the god roll is probably the Here to the Desert with either Mage's Rage or Fortress, but thankfully I got Rural in Umbra, which is also a god roll. Armor pierce, status power, no survivability mode, but we don't care, we have the major damaging attributes. Mage's Rage for the Apocalypse here, we added Fortress for maximum single target DPS, and the bonus that we left the Kinetic Stomp. It's okay with these two and the armor piece, you can have maximum single target DPS when you shoot the boss for, I don't know, 3 to 5 seconds to proc the Fortress. More survivability, more damage, yes, this is always good. And against the mobs, because you have so much good damage, you don't actually need to use this. This is the boss killer. We're going to use a little better version of Here to the Desert or something similar with decent tier 3 mods for single target DPS or AoE, with armor piece once again, status power, skill leech. Sunstorm, I have added Firestorm, which I believe is a must for the secondary weapon, and I have as a bonus Ultimate Bone Shrapnel, not the best option, but it's better than the previous I had. Let's have a closer look at the talents we're using. I made a lot of tests, and I think this is the most balanced among for damage and survivability, because we will look at the stats, and here we focus on the Tempest Tree, and we go up to the Ashbreaker to have Conflagration and Blood Boil. This way we will have 105% resistance pierce, and this 50% of this will be converted in anomaly power. That's why in our level, which is 62 out of 75, we have 1.1 million anomaly power. Excellent, very good. And we still have some survivability because we have the Phoenix Nestling. You can change this for the with fire and anomaly for even further increase in damage. However, I don't see any benefit to do that. You're already melting bosses, destroying expeditions, why not have just an extra life? Phoenix Nestling will save you a lot of times in case you die, in case you lag spike, in case you're stuck somewhere, or you get unlucky and you don't trigger your cooldowns and die. This will give you an extra life every 30 minutes. So yes, I do recommend it for all the builds we're using for Phoenix Nestling. Now, we can compromise a little more in damage and have even further survivability, because our physical damage reduction with the damage absorber we have should be around 68%, but we can make this change to further increase our survivability. So we basically stopped going to the Ashbreaker, so we compromised Blood Boil and Conflagration to get some other mods, Master of the Armor and Master of the Resistance. This way we will have 50% resistance, 40% of the talent, 10% from damage absorber, more than 70% physical damage reduction at max level, and in case you also trigger the Fortress, you will have a lot of resistance and armor. We have a little fewer, 80% resistance is still very good, because before that in the New Horizons we have like 15-13% resistance and still melting elites, but 80% is still very good. Yes, this will focus more on survivability for damage and of course Strike of the Flame reduced damage against elites. This is what I do recommend for beginner players. If you are new to the game and you starting to getting know to the expeditions, Tarya Gratar, and you're afraid you're going to die, this will help you to basically make you almost immortal, because you have the second chance and a lot of survivability. So let's have a closer look at the Pax Tree. Pyromaniac all the way in Pyromaniac, because Melting Point 4 increase more resistance piercing, Master Exploder 100% of resistance piercing, increase the damage of the skills, that's why we stack a lot of resistance piercing. Convection, yeah, best talent, mandatory, it reduces the cooldown by 4 seconds, every 3 seconds when all your skills go in cooldown. Backdraft, 30% extra anomaly power. For every skill in cooldown, this will give us 60% anomaly power if we have both skills on cooldown when we either using the Eruption or Phaser Beam, so it's awesome. And I go for trigger sequence for the simple reason you need a little bit of extra DPS, and for conduction I'm not using this for a reason I'm going to share with you how it works with Ascension levels. I don't know if this is bugged, but for now, for example, let's have a look at the Ascension. I'm using cooldown reduction. This way we have, you see the cooldowns 5.4, 6.8 and 11.6. Now let's make a change. Let's change the Pax Tree to have, let's say, the cooldown reduction and this. Our skills now are 4.5, 5.7 and 9.7. So they're very good, they're much better. However, if we change the Ascension levels and reset the cooldown reduction, our skill cooldowns remain the same, so we don't take any benefit from the Ascension level up, in case we do that for the Pax Tree. I don't know if this is bugged or works as intended. Because of that, I do want to invest the Pax Tree and have this to further increase our damage for against elites and bosses. You can also go for coming in hot, but yep, I do recommend to go for trigger sequence. And as you can see, now our skills without the Ascension cooldown, there are 6.1, 7.6, 13 seconds. Thankfully, when we go to the Ascension and we get 10 points in cooldown reduction, our skills become much better. Lower than 6, lower than 7, lower than 12. More than enough, very good for our rotation and everything else, but let's have a look at the rest of the priority. Number 1, once again, is Anomaly damage. Number 2 is Resistance piercing. Number 3 is between Armor pierce and Anomaly power. I would go with Anomaly power, it's just pure increase of damage, or Armor pierce, I don't know for the values. Probably Armor pierce could be better because it increases our damage of the skills, but yeah, I would go for Anomaly power, then Armor pierce, then cooldown reduction, and then I'm still going leveling up damage against elites. And then you can focus a little bit on survivability to increase your armor, damage mitigation against elites, resistance, skill life leech in case you don't have a lot, extra health, and then you focus on everything else, a little bit of magazine size, and you don't get benefit of almost everything else. Unfortunately, as far as I know, spells don't critical hit. In case they change that, this can go much higher in the priority, but for now, these are very dumb stats for the Ascension levels. Let's have a look for the ideal 2 mods we're missing for the armor and what our other alternative good options are. In my opinion, I'm looking for to have the double fan. This way, Thermal Bomb will be much better to dispose of, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 just the regular mobs that are chilling in the back or debuff to one elite and a mob. That's why I like it. And the second one, we have very good options. Now, Power Assimilation is probably the best candidate for standard increased DPS. It increases your Anomaly power a little less compared to Anomaly Echo or Arms of the Anomaly, but it's very consistent, especially when you go in a big room and there are 4 or 5 elites. You get a huge boost of Anomaly power, and that's why I like it. But also Anomaly Echo is a decent choice, very consistent every time you use a skill. And for single target, Arms and Anomaly is actually very good because it further increases your Anomaly power. Compared to Anomaly Echo, it gives around 100,000 more Anomaly power for 6 seconds as long as you're doing critical, and because we're using the Mage's Rage, so you will take advantage of that. It depends what you're looking for. I do believe Arms of Anomaly is a little better to further increase your single target DPS, or in case you don't want to bother for doing criticals, let's go with Power Simulation or Anomaly Echo. And here are a few mods to avoid that may look good. Danger Close, because we're going for almost long range, sometimes medium but long range. We don't want to go for closer range to the enemies, that's why we won't take so much advantage of that. That's why I don't like it. For survivability, self-medication I think is very good in case you want a little more. Increase your max health by a lot every time you use the skill and goes on cooldown. Very good, very nice, I do like it. Or another good survivability mode against enemies that deal anomaly damage is Circle of Power, especially with a setup that has 50% resistance, including that you will have 80% resistance. Yeah, just basically unkillable against Moloch or similar enemies. Very good, I do like it. And some mods I do want to test a little further is improved damage. I don't know how much extra damage we're going to get for the only Eruption. I do prefer to have Anomaly boost that increase the damage of 4 other skills rather than in only one skill. And once again avoid, as I told you, the Fire Frenzy. Something I would consider to try is Big Boom, but once again I use Thermal Bomb to debuff or kill a small group of enemies. All the other groups you deal with the Eruption or the Phaser Beam. That's why I'm not focusing a lot of Thermal Bomb. It's just there to debuff the enemies and kill some annoying enemies. Now, for the tier 2 mods, apart from I already have Bullet Kindling and no resistance against the Fortified and Damage Absorber, for now nothing else stands out too much. Apart for what I want to do is Trample the Weak. I don't know how well we can inflict weakness. We have a lot of status power, and this can be actually very decent because it's damage multiplier, and damage multipliers are the best things you can increase. Or in case you have a weapon that inflicts, I don't know, Toxic, very consistent, or something else. Toxic is very good. Euthanizer could be a good option to consider for the tier 3 weapon choice, or something like Radical Therapy, or in case you inflict freeze to some enemies, freezing boost, or 16% against enemies ability 5 freeze, because I forgot to send this from a Technomancer, but because of the Apocalypse gear you can get tier 3 mods that are not class specific, such as Euthanizer or something else for the tiered mode. You may be able to unlock everything, so you don't worry about it. So these are the options I recommend, these are the options I like. The armor, let's have a closer look at the weapon. And when I say the weapons, I mean the secondary weapon, because Mage's Range, a Fortress, is the god roll in a weapon with armor piece. So once again, get armor piece, Fortress, Mage's Range, and you don't care about anything else. You maximize your single target DPS and get the second weapon, which we are going to focus a little bit now. Let's say the Head to the Desert, that has the Sunstorm, a good tier 3 AoE for Apocalypse gear. And then Firestorm is something I like. I have tested Stigmatized, and for now I'm not very impressed. It doesn't offer a lot of damage. Toxic is good because successfully, so it's inflict Toxic. So if you have it for free, it's not bad to have to inflict Toxic, especially considering we have a lot of status power. It makes some good things. I do like some options like Violet Rapture, Ultimate Storm Whip, Wrath of Moloch, basically mods that deal a lot of damage with minimum investment. You have to shoot like Claymore Torrent. But yeah, Firestorm is probably my favorite. It deals a lot of damage and inflicts burns for a long period of time. You don't have to shoot but once, use your skills, just repeat, and it's very good, very decent. And this is probably my primary weapon when I go for expeditions or to clear the trash. I just switch to the primary weapon to kill elites or high health enemies because that's what it's good for. You don't need it for anything else. The rotation is pretty straightforward when you're dealing with a lot of enemies. Thermal Bomb, Phaser Beam to get a lot of Anomaly power boost and inflict Ash to some enemies, and then dump Eruption to kill some groups of enemies. Even when you throw Eruption, it throws a debris in the area for some seconds. This way, when they walk inside the debris, they can die. So one Eruption can be enough, for example, for a large group of enemies when they just run or just to destroy them. For single target, it's a little more complicated, but not so much. Now, we open with Thermal Bomb. I do prefer to open with Firestorm to have a damage over time and inflict standard burn to the boss. And then I start with Thermal Bomb, Fortress, and Mage's Race proc, so you have to do some criticals. Wait for this green aura to proc when you are using a weapon. This way you will know that you have Fortress. And then you dump Phaser Beam, Eruption, Eruption, Eruption. In case Thermal Bomb comes back before the third Eruption, prioritize to use that Thermal Bomb so you have both skills on cooldown to have the Anomaly power boost for Eruption. Once you get the other two skills back, you use it, Thermal Bomb and then Phaser Beam. So this way we will have in the rotation 3 Eruptions with 60% Anomaly power increase and at least 1 or 2 Phaser Beams with the same thing, 60% Anomaly power increase. The damage is so high, even the Arbiter cannot stand a chance. I think average you need 5 to 6 Eruption and 2 or 3 phaser beams to kill him. So that's more than enough, especially if you have the God roll. And without the God roll, for example, the Fortress, Mage's Raise is more than enough to deal with Arbiter, because I have tested this before the God roll. As you can see the background, for example, this is a run without the God roll, only Mage's Rage and nothing else. And still the damage is insanely high, and you can still kill the bosses very, very fast. I don't find major disadvantages using this build, only that you need to focus having the Lava Lich shed. Even if you have the legs and the boots, just use those. They have max health, however, you need the boost of the Eruption damage and cooldown reduction. The gloves are the best because they have Etna. The boots are not so good because they have 2 survivability modes. In case you want to use Circle of Power, yes, use the boots. In case you don't, just use the gloves in worst case scenario. And so that was it for today's video. I really hope this will help you to build your own variation of the Lava Lich Eruption Anomaly power build. Very good, very consistent for expeditions, for Tarya Gratar, to melt the boss, the last boss, the Arbiter. And once we get fully God roll things, I do believe at maximum level that this has the potential to be one of the best, if not the best single target DPS build out there. Very good and very consistent and very easy to use. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch the video. Extra thank you in case you stick around until the end. Feel free to like and subscribe for more upcoming videos for Outriders New Horizon and other video games. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful day.